Hello, welcome to the Flame Shop at Corning Studios, beautiful upstate New York. Corning has had me here for 3 years in a row teaching, and I'm excited for this 2-week course. This year I have as my TA Matt Robertson, who is well known for making these giraffes. So what I'll be making is using his giraffe prep, and we're gonna do a monkey face on a one-hitter. And so I'm just showing you, this is a demo piece from yesterday. We're gonna use this for a more involved piece, but this is my work, monkey head. And this is just one piece from the first day. We demonstrated for the students how to do a bear head, and Matt put on these horns in this ear. But let's get going. Oh, and hi, Mom. So Matt made this prep with Silver Strike frit, and I believe it was maple syrup. He draws all the patterning on with stringers of glass. And we're using borosilicate glass, which has a lower thermal expansion rate as opposed to the soft glass. And we manipulate it with a torch powered with propane and oxygen. So my first step is I'm going to take this beautiful piece of prep, and I'm going to pull it out into a bat shape, tapered shape. This is my piece of tubing, my blow hose, so that will be the smallest part of the taper. And yes, these giraffe lines will get stretched out and distorted a tiny bit, but this will be part of the piece in general. So a lot of this flame working, lamp working is all about rotating the glass evenly in the flame, and I'm really feeling it. You'll see me pushing and pulling on the glass, and I'm just feeling how hot it is, how thick it is, what viscosity it's at before I actually go to manipulate it. So I'll slowly just shape this into a tapered baseball bat shape. So with glass blowing, flame working, you do need to keep spinning the glass, but you can spin back and forth 180 degrees instead of going full counterclockwise or full clockwise. And as it's setting up, I'm kind of twisting it. If you notice, the giraffe pattern was getting a little twisted, but I don't worry about that while it's in the flame. As it's cooling down, I will try to straighten it out. I'm very glad to be able to teach pipe making techniques at Corning. As everybody knows, it was a taboo form of art for quite a while. But for the glass, we use the borosilicate 33 COE thermal expansion. Pyrex is a more common name that people would know. That glass was invented for higher temperature applications. It won't thermal shock as easily, and that's why we use it for pipe making, because an ember of something combusting inside a glass can cause a drastic heat change. And with soft glass or 96 seaweed glass, that might end up cracking and breaking later on. But I'm only explaining this because the reason why we have so many colors in borosilicate glass now is directly related to pipe making and cannabis. Without that aspect, there might not be as big of a palette as we have now. And so I got my shape tapered out to where I'm happy with it. And sometimes to open the end of a tube, I could just blow into it. But I like to utilize this a nail head technique is what I call it, where I will end up having the end of my tube, it's closed. I might puff a tiny bit of it, and then I'm taking a rod of clear and smashing it into a nail head. That's why I call it that. And then I'm just heating the very tip of this piece of tubing, stabbing that nail head and pulling it out really thin. And I might do that a few times. Pulling it out really thin, and it's so thin I could just break that off. But instead of breaking that off, I can take a rod of glass and superheat it up and use the glass to melt that back and break it off in a nicer manner with minimizing any glass particles flying anywhere. So to do this, I'm taking my hot gob. You see how it's just melting all that thin glass, and I will push this down until the thin glass meets the thicker glass, and then we just wait. And as soon as it starts setting up, I might wiggle this and it will break open. It breaks a nice even hole into the glass. The nail head tech. And that's a hot tip. So now I started in scientific glass, which utilizes straight rollers. See that isn't too straight, I will straighten that out. And calipers. So it's pretty thick. I want it to be thick. Just needs a little bit more heat before I straighten it out. So the straight rollers really help keep things spinning straight. It's similar to the bench in the hot shop. And then calipers are just a way to save measurements. So this opening, I'm going to measure a little bit wider than that, and I know this material that I'm going to encamo up to it, I want it to be at least that big for the opening. So I'll put this back in the kiln. We have our kiln set at 1050 Fahrenheit. That is the annealing temperature for this type of glass. See how straight this is. It's nice to have everything straight and even. There's a little bit of kiln dust left on that, and I'll just wipe it off with my Kevlar glove. So what I did there, I was just cleaning the end of the glass off. This was a coil pot of color. And I'm using my calipers. I blew out this little thin bubble to make sure it's about the size that I'm looking for. And that nail head technique that I just showed you, You don't always have to use the hot gob of glass to disconnect it or to open it up. So I'll just show you how to do it quickly on the fly. I have my nail head, my bubble, pulling it thin. I'm always pulling this glass out of the flame. It's very thin now. And then just with the flame, you can rip it open. And if you get a little bleb of glass somewhere, you just pick it off. But it still opened it up pretty nice and even. That's good. I will flare this open just a tiny bit more. Again, I need to wipe off that kiln dust. It will burn into the glass if you leave it on there. Now for encamos, for something this small, I will join it outside the flame. I'm superheating both sides. And then outside the flame, I can hinge it. I'm almost sticking one side and closing it like a book, and then immediately go back into the flame. And I'm really just focusing on that sealed point where I join them for the heat at first. And I'm going to give it a decent puff because we're trying to work both of these pieces of glass together as a homogeneous one smooth piece. So maybe about 2 or 3 puffs, 2 or 3 heats. It should be all joined together properly. And I need to do a constriction, and since this transparent brown that I'm using on this side, once it's hot, it's pretty opaque. So to be able to see where my constriction's at, I'm gonna add clear. I'm gonna cut this, add clear, so I have a window to look down into. So I'm superheating this, and I'll use my diamond shears to make a connection, or make a constriction, sorry, and neck it down, and from there I can break it. So I'm looking down the barrel of this piece. It's thick. I want it to be thick, but I just look down there the barrel to give myself an idea of how much I need to constrict the material behind this. Using the edge of my marver to flare something on the fly, flare a piece of tubing on the fly. And I put an earplug in the backside so I can have put air pressure into this. And this is a quick and dirty way to put a piece of clear onto another handle, but it works. That end was a little warm. All right, this end I just fire polished. It's a little too hot for me to blow into. I always want my handles to be fire polished, so if they're not, I will fire polish them as needed. This is not super ideal, but I will grab my blow hose now. What I'm really looking for is just a clear window that I can kind of look down the center of it. And I'm going to find where I want to constrict it, and I think I'm going to do it on his patterning, and we'll see how much that will distort it, but it could add some depth to the piece as well. So I'm not really pushing, I'm not really blowing, I'm just letting the glass get hot and constricting itself. Once I think I got it hot enough, it probably needs to get heated more, but I'll check it by looking down the barrel of it. And it needs to go a little bit further. I might have to do this a couple more times, but you don't want it to close up. And you know what? I might end up just taking this out so I can see down it. Oh yeah, it needs to go a little bit further. All right, that's getting pretty good. Disconnect my blow hose. I'm going to heat this up so maybe you can get the view of the constriction with the camera. You might be able to see down the barrel of it. Can you see that? Or so that's why I sealed that clear on, and I'm looking down the center of it. So I'm going to end up removing quite a bit of this transparent brown color. I'm just want like a little accent on the top of there. Before I take off too much, I'll pop it open and see where we're at, how far down that constriction is. Because it's a one hitter. There's a fine line between too small of a bowl, too big of a bowl. I think we're going to be pretty good with this one, but I do need to remove a tiny bit more material. Right. So I'm flaring it open, and I really want to have a nice crispy edge on there. So I'm going to do a combination of touching the inside with my tool, flaring it using the L marver, and flattening it at the end. I want this piece to be beefy enough to be like utilitarian, where you can actually use it and not worry about it breaking. You could have it in your pocket. You could stamp it on the table to get your bowl cleared out. And it's just a small little one-hitter size bowl, but enough to share with a friend too. And so now I want to draw a monkey face on there. You might even take a seat, get comfortable. And I don't need this shield anymore. So this is a little bit of a different technique because I don't want to distort this bowl. I'm going to do my best to minimize the amount of distortion, but I will need my knife. There it is. And so what I'm going to do is just put an indent where I want the bottom of the or where I want the eyes to be. I'm just lightly doing it, and this whole time I'm drawing the face, I'm going to go and check to see if I'm distorting that constriction or not. It's looking good. If I keep getting it too hot, it will end up pushing everything in. Now after I define where the eye would be, there's a little ridge right there that I'm going to try to push back with the edge of my knife as well. Just this rolling motion. And I think this will be a good size. I already pulled a stringer. This is Silver Strike 5 rod. Then Matt, do you use maple syrup for the dots or honey badger for the giraffe dots pattern? All right, so I showed the students earlier how to add the face by striping it, but you don't always have to do that. We can take this rod and draw the outline of the brow shape first and fill it in all in one go, and that's what I'm going to try to do here. So I start in the middle, I'm drawing the brow all the way up, all the way down, back up. And now I'm really pushing into that valley that I created, just like I showed you guys the overlay. And especially at the end here, I'm really making sure to not trap any air. Then I like using tweezers to remove some extra material and kind of tease more of that into shape. This additive process is I'm adding the glass. I might move it around into the shape where I want it, tease it, and then go back and fully melt it in, and then let it set, and then go back and carve it a little bit more. So that's it, just drawn on there. But I can see through the center that's too hot. If I went to push that up now, it would push the entire constriction up, which happens sometimes, but I gotta let that set. And this borosilicate glass, because it's 33 COE, it's a lower thermal expansion rate, it sets a lot faster than soft glass would. So now I'm trying to just only heat the surface. I'm using the edge of my flame to just try to heat this patty that I added to it, and then I'll take my knife and push it all back into itself. There we go, and that really spread it out. Now I'm going to add some material for the muzzle or the mouth, if you will. And this rod is pretty bubbly for some reason, but yeah.
I noticed that as well.
Yeah, sometimes this color goes batch to batch, and the way that they make it is like in maybe a 60 or 90 pound furnace, and so it's like batch to batch, and it depends on where in the pot it was pulled out of, you know. So the top of the pot might be different quality than the middle. The middle is always the best, and the end. So, but that's okay. You can work with it. Just gather it up a bit. And this is below the constriction that I made, so I will be able to. I'm not as worried about pushing the inside wall weight inwards or distorting the inside wall weight. So I just added that bit, detaching the extra glass. And then I know there's a little bit more material there than I want, so tear that away. And I guess same thing, like before I fully melt it in, I'm gonna get it warm and use my knife to kind of tease the material where I would want it at. Because if you lay down some material in the wrong area, you get a tiny bit of window to move it. And a lot of people ask me why I make monkeys, and it's just always been my favorite animal since I was 2 years old. My grandmother had taken me to some town. We were walking down the street, and there was a gift shop that had a little stuffed monkey. And she said that I stopped in my tracks, and I looked at this little stuffed monkey, and I said, "Oh, monkey." And so she brought me into the shop. I don't remember any of this. And the very nice sales lady brought it out for me, and she's like, "Here, you can hold it." And I said, "Oh, monkey." And I looked at it, and then I like hugged it, and then I like looked at it, and she got it for me. And since then, it's always been my favorite animal. I do not. I wish I did, you know. Those things you get like when you're young, if they're not taken care of, they can disappear. I still remember what it looks like. I had it until I was like a teenager probably. Now I'm like heating the material up and pressing it downwards. The faces can have different expressions depending on how you manipulate the mouth and the eyes. But we're not in the expression part of the demo yet, so this is just baseline putting material down. And I can't blow into that, but I'm just checking to make sure it's still as straight as I can have it. Now I need to add a nose. So I'm literally just gonna heat up some of this thinner pulled glass and add it to right where the nose and that eye ridge meet. Just connect it. Same thing, I added material. I'm gonna push it around before I do the final melt in. I had a little dollop hit the mouth, but you can worry about those mistakes later. Just when you have the heat in the glass, you really want to make moves as fast as you can. All right, there's the nose. So there we are at that part of the process, and I can already tell that I'm going to need more of a landing pad for these eyeballs, so I'm going to draw some extra material underneath the eyes. I'm just going to pull it out a tiny bit thinner. And I pull it to a nice taper. And it's really hard to, like, once I stick this thin piece of glass in the flame, it will just start moving immediately. So what I can do to minimize that is I'm going to heat up where I want it to land, and then outside the flame, stick that thin piece, and then drop it back into the flame. So outside the flame, I put it where I want it, and then drop it into the flame and add this material that I need. Same thing, just melting it in first. Pull another taper bit. Utilizing this grip where you hold it this way, you turn your arm and open your grip and put your hand under the torch, and you have to be extremely careful when you do this to not put your arm into the flame. So heat up where I want to land this tip, and then outside the flame, put it in there. And see, I landed it wrong, but because it was outside the flame, I had a second to maneuver it where I wanted it to be. And that's like, you can use that for a lot of different techniques, I'm sure. Sure you probably do something similar with your work. I definitely added some of the bit by accident down here, so I'll try to break it off as good as I can. And if I can't get it all off, it's not the end of the world. It's like a little birthmark. All right, melted that in. I'm gonna go back because the nose got a little melted in, so we can reshape that, and I'm going to push it on either side, and it pushes the material back out. And then I'm gonna define a landing pad for my eyeballs. So I will heat this one side. I wanna make sure there's not too much heat in there. I don't wanna distort the constriction. So I'm superheating that surface of the glass I just laid on there, using my knife and pushing in a little landing pad. Do the same thing on the other side. Sometimes it helps to rest your piece on the L-marver so you have something to push against, so you're not just in the air trying to have two unstabilized pieces that you're manipulating. Need my pointy tool. And I'll carve up a little middle portion right here, just to spread the material back down and tease this into shape. And now we're getting close to putting eyes in there. Really wanted to use this green eye murrine that I made. And if you look back on the Corning's YouTube library, there's a demonstration I did last year that's up there on how I make my eye murrine. And so I usually like hold it up to see how much murrine I'm gonna need for the eye. And I know that I can use this, but I'm gonna have to implode it out. So we'll throw this back in the oven for a second, and we're gonna put one eye in at a time. So I know I'm going to need a decent amount of material for these, so I will cut. I usually cut a longer piece, and then I'll cut that in half to get both of my eyes. It's just easier for me to get two even-ish pieces when I cut it in half, divide it in half, if you will. And then I place it. If you notice, there's like one side is a little unlevel, and then one side's more flat. I take the flatter side and put it on my marver facing up. Then so I don't know, did we show how I encased the murrine in that video? Yeah? Okay. So we'll just go over it again, obviously. So I'm gripping it. I'm going to stab up to the back of it with this clear. And as I have that heat in there, I'll pull it around so it's on center. And sometimes this will break, so I'm trying to not let it cool too much. And I start and I move the heat up to the front of that. And then I'll roll it on my marver just to make sure it's centered out.
I got 2 eyes made too.
You do? Let me see one of them. We could do one of each. So now I'll add dollop of glass. I'll just probably leave about that much on the tip of it. And what I'm going to do is implode it, so I'm going to heat the clear at this sort of angle, and glass wants to follow heat and gravity. So I'm going to heat at this angle and slowly bring the heat around and also drop my handle so that all the glass will want to fall with it. So I'm going to do this, heat the tip, bring the heat around to the side, drop my handle, bring the heat down, let it set. I'm going to do that like 2 or 3 times. You do want to let it set for a second because I'm really just trying to focus the heat on that clear that I added, that dollop of clear. Bring the heat down around the sides and then let it set. And you can see that it's starting to implode. If you look at a person's eye, it's not just a flat piece with clear on it. It's like the eye is encased. There's like a hemisphere, there's like a sphere like protruding inside of it. So one more time, heating the clear, dropping. I'm pretty happy with that. Still see a lens. Also look at it, see if there's any imperfections or any bubbles in there, and this looks okay. I'm punching up to the front of it. And then I'll remove all this clear and then probably a lot of the murrine, but you see how hot it is right now? I don't want to start pulling and pulling because it's going to pull the whole thing into a football shape. I'm going to let that set and just heat this little tip of clear. And that will allow heat to get back into the backside of it and also keep it from being too hot. So now letting it set, there's a tail, heating that tail only, letting the heat get back into it, and then grabbing it and pulling it out. You can do that as much as you want until you get the size that you need. You can see each time I'm just leaving a tail, and then I'm only heating that tail, pulling it out. So let's go check to see if this is a good size. And it's a little big, so I'm going to end up taking a little bit more off. Again, just heating that tail. The Matt, you said you had eyes too? Where'd you?
Yeah, I got a matching set right here, and I think I got a random one.
These might be a little big.
Are they? Okay.
Yeah.
I just
Think so.
maybe I use that.
Oh. All right. So before I landed in there, I have two different sort of size landing pads. I'll decide which one I want to land this one in. And this side is a little bigger, so I'll do that one first. So this is like the plunge move. You see my eyeball is shaped almost like a Skittle or an M&M, sort of flattened on the back. And then I will superheat it with this tiny flame. And what I'm trying to do is, when I add this eye in, I want the glass to sort of ripple out like a droplet going into water. But I need the surface of the glass superheated, and then I need the back to have some stiffness, something to push against. So I'm really trying to superheat my landing area. And also like have it be cold enough behind it so I can push against something. Just preheating that so it's gonna stick. I plunge the eyeball into it. Wait, and I'm really looking at the side view and the front. And the side view, I'm like, you really want the eyes to be recessed into a piece. And then I do this move where I'm heating around it, and then in my mind I'm like gluing it into place. And then because I superheated that nose again, sometimes on small ones like this, I will add the nose after the eyes go in. I just totally spaced on that. Okay, one more eye. Stuck it on, made sure it was straight. And I will go back and roll it in the marver. And I'll show you how to encase it a different manner without doing the implosion way. So I'm going to add dollop of glass. I'm going to remove some of it, and with that same heat, I'm going to push it with my graphite paddle, and I'm going to be spreading it around like icing a cake. So start in the center, and then I'm spreading it around, and then I drop my handle and let gravity take it, and from there, it's encased. There's just two different methods. Two different looks also. And then once it's cool, we'll be able to like see the difference. Obviously one way was a lot faster. I'm starting to tear off this clear. And then I want to really make sure the eye's cold, so when I'm pulling this little tip, that's the only thing I'm heating. It's that tip, pulling it out, only just heating that tip. And if the eye gets too hot, I'll let it cool. But if you just are only heating this little tip, there's only one place for the heat to go. It's not going to go all the way to the front. It's all about like flame control and precision. So I think this would be the right size. Would you mind just grabbing me that? Thank you. Oh yeah, that'll work. So again, we're going for a plunge. And need my landing area super heated. And my eyeball relatively cold. If the eye is a little too hot, it'll spread out, which is also a cool look. And I will utilize that sometimes for bigger pieces, but for this small one, I want this pretty cool. I'm always pushing against the marvering pad, so I have something to push against. And then I'm looking at the side view to see how far it's recessed into the eye cavity. And that's what really helps out some sculpting work is, you know, giving your eyes, making them recessed into it. If an eyeball is just sitting on the surface of a piece, it'll look more protruded out, which is just a different look, you know, and sometimes you might want that look. All right. Let's do some final adjustments on the nose. I'm pushing the top of this nose down a little bit, and I might even pull it out. Remember I showed you guys how I would use centrifugal force to throw the nose out. Something this small, you can't really do that, so I'm going to heat it and kind of pull it out with this colored rod. Just a tiny bit. Now we start adding some eyebrows or eyelids, whatever you see them. And I usually, you want to lay your eyelids down in a manner wherever it's going to be expressed, you know. So I usually like going with like an angry expression. So I'll lay the line down starting here at this sort of angle. If I wanted like a more surprised look, I would have the eyes more open and up like this. If I wanted it to be sad, could have it down like that. And so between how you manipulate the eyelids and the mouth, you can make a few different expressions. So I'm heating up like pretty much above where the eye is, and then I'm heating this rod up, and I'm just gonna lay it in there. I'm really intentionally pushing it down to maybe fill that void. And then at the end, I will take my tweezers and I'll pull this out and down, and it starts giving this eye shape on the end of it, the eyelid shape. I'm going to superheat behind the eye, behind that eyelid, and then I'm going to push this material back up, and I will smush my eyelid down just a tiny bit. I'm not really forcing it that much. And that's just to like squeeze out any air that might have been trapped in there. So we got the first eyelid on. And I'll go back to that and shape it more later, but and I will do a giant monkey head later on this week, so it'll be way easier to see. Laying this down. This is my blind side. So I'm just trusting that I'm laying it down in the right manner. Grab that tip and I'm pulling it out and down. There's a big air bubble in that piece of rod. Slightly tapping it, pushing it into place. And then I'll try to push it down like this to squeeze out maybe any remaining air that was in there. I think it looks good. Now I'm going to go back to this side and just give it some finalized carve moves. So start up here and push downwards. And roll the knife over And I'll even come back up here and roll it into shape. And so that's what we're doing a lot of times when we're carving glass. We're not slicing it, we're just rolling our knives on the surface, we're pushing with it. It's very rare that we would be slicing the glass. In this manner of working, it's almost like working clay, but you have to keep going back to it to get it to be able to manipulate it. You only have a very small amount of working time before you have to go back into the flame. So you see I'm juggling it back and forth. Then I'll carve some forehead lines. Start the center, start with this center, and I'll go back around. I'll go back and redefine the center line. At the very end, I'll grab my butter knife and roll this whole edge. Even if it's all melted in there, I just want to define that edge. It gives it a nice look. And then I'm going to grab this is a pretty small monkey face, so I have these pretty tiny tweezers. They make tungsten ones that are pretty good too for this. So what I do for the nose is I'll grab it and push it in with a pair of tweezers. So I have different size tweezers for different size monkey heads. And I use these for other stuff, but these will dictate the nostril size. So same thing, I want the front of this nose superheated, but I want some resistance in the back. I want something to push against. Otherwise the whole nose will just get spread out and smushed. So sometimes I'll just preheat my tweezers. They're not glowing red, they're just kind of in and out of the flame. Superheating that tip of the nose. And then outside the flame, I'm going to try my best to grab it and push it up and in. I'm even opening the tweezers and I'm like pushing it all around. You get like maybe one chance to do that on it, and you can go back a tiny bit, but you really want to get that move done on the first go. And I noticed with this color, there's like a little line left from when I added the nose, and to minimize how abrupt that looks, I'm just going to grab that and pull it down. Just a couple more carves. Do a mouth, but I want to give it a little bit more expression, so I'm going to pull this side up. Instead of what I showed you guys just doing a straight line, I just started the line this way, kind of moved the material up. Now on this side, I'm going to kind of push it downwards. You can always play around with how you want it to look, you know, on a smaller scale like this before you go to do a bigger piece. And it might even give some carves up on this top part of the jaw, and then when I go to push this bottom part, I'm going to push some of the material over that way. These are all just little subtle moves in and out of the flame. And now I want the top of the jaw to have some movement in it, and the bottom jaw I want to be the hottest. So I'm going to soak a little heat in there. On this bottom jaw piece, really going to grab just a portion of it and start bringing it upwards. And then go back around the bottom, carve it in. Going back over everything, Normally I'd puff into it, but it's open. So that's pretty good. Just gonna heat it up so you can see it a little bit better. Nice little monkey face. But it needs ears. I think we have time for ears. Just gonna put it back in the kiln while I pull a stringer out. Sometimes you can pull a stringer out, just keep going and going, you know. Instead of heating the whole, like a whole rod and pulling it out, you can just start drawing out of out of a bigger rod. So these ears, I showed you guys how I pre-make ears on bigger pieces, these smaller ones. Sometimes I will pre-make an ear, but this is another method that I've found for adding ears. I'm gonna give this a quick warm up because all those moves were really intense and all the heat was in the front of the glass. So even though borosilicate can handle temperature change, it can crack, and there would be a stress line all the way down here and all the way up around where I worked it. Like if you looked at it, if you could look at this under a polariscope, you would see all this stress. Even from sitting in the kiln from like 2 minutes, it wouldn't, the amount of time it was in the kiln wouldn't have alleviated that stress. And so just like with adding the bigger ears, I'll start with my blind side, which what by I mean is like when I add this, which would be the monkey's left ear, I can see what I'm doing, but when I'm adding this, I can't really see how it is on the face, so it's easier for me to match this side. So I always start with my blind side. And I'm gonna give him like little small ears, but I'll start drawing this in like a crescent moon shape. So I'm applying it in the shape of an ear. Probably gonna have to add a little bit more material down there, so I just went back over that line. And from there I'm building it up like building a wall of glass. Cool. And then I need a pair of tweezers that are unserrated. I usually heat the back side of the ear that I just added, and then bring the heat around to the front from there. And then slowly pinching it. Pinch, 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 pinch. Just teasing it around. I'll do that a few times. Did you guys hear that whistle? That is of the old like work whistle from this area, right? Yeah, from the plant, and they kept it after they closed the factory. So it goes off at like 8 a.m. or once before that at noon, and then at what, 5? Yep.
And then 12:45 and 1.
Yep. And I know, Brent, you said you never been here before, so that's probably, you're probably wondering what the hell that thing was. Yeah. I heard rumors that they took it away and the people that lived here were so used to it they wanted to bring it back. Is that true? So yeah, just slowly pinching it and teasing it around and using the heat. I kind of add that a little bit far back, but as long as I add the other one in a similar manner, it should look okay. But yeah, that little pinching maneuver, you could really use that for a lot of different techniques. Like if I'm adding clothing to something, I might use that to add like flaps on the bottom, build it up with stringers, pinch, melt it, pinch it. If I'm adding a brim of a hat, I might use that. So I'm going to try to draw this in the similar manner as far back as that one is. Little half moon, crescent moon shape, I mean. I'm building it up like a wall. You can always like just start building it small and pinch it and then add more material later, pinch it and shape it. You know, this is your world. You're the creator. Pinch, 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 pinch. So when I'm initially pinching it, I'm not squeezing hard at all. And then as it's cooling, I'm pinching harder and harder. Because if you go in right away and squeeze it tight, it's just gonna, you know, it'll turn into a different style of ear. If you guys don't have an unserrated pair of tweezers, I don't mind if you borrow these. Just if you borrow any of my tools, just put them back. Slowly but surely, we're getting close. Sculpting, it's like with glass, it's definitely quicker than painting, but in a manner of like a painting's never finished. It's like you can keep touching the glass like so many times. Like at a certain point, you just gotta, you know, call it. All right. I think that's it. And then it's pretty cool. Then I put it in the kiln anyways before I took it off the handle, so I think that will conclude the live stream for today. But we can get one more hot shot. I'll just soak some heat in here. And I actually do, is it okay if I just reach right here? I have this mini torch that I will, like this color has a lot of silver that comes off of it. So I will hit the eyeballs because the eyeballs probably got fumed out. And then sometimes I'll blast off. You see how this got fumed out right there, but I like it sometimes. So sometimes I like it. Well,
really even. It looks nice.
Yeah.
It's like chromed out. Beautiful.
So we made ourselves a little friend. All right, guys. Thanks for joining. If you haven't been to Corning Museum, you should make a trip up and spend some time with us. And the studio has some amazing teachers come through every year. And there's also offers artist residencies and scholarships for students as well. So thank you.